wash my soul in the ocean, in the tears of God, I let it go.
From the start of the solar system, and we're going to use the esoteric knowledge given to us in the Western tradition, because most people are familiar with the Eastern tradition, Vedic, Indian, Buddhism, but they don't realize that we have super rich esoteric tradition in the West as well, given to us by Christian Rosenkreuz, who created Rosicrucianism in the 13th century, then Rudolf Steiner, then Master Bin Soduno, and other Western esoterics, that they're much more scientific. They give the scientific explanation with spiritual understanding of, the higher entities to us. So we're going to go 4 billion years ago as a start. And before I start, I just want to tell you, the entities, human beings are here. Above them are angels, one level of consciousness. Above angels are archangels, 2 levels above humans. Above archangels are archives or principalities. These, the angels, archangels, and principalities, they work directly with humans. They basically take care of plants, of animals, they create them, they personal guardian angels of the angels. Well, these are the angels, they work directly with humans. The archangels, they work on a bigger scale. They work with whole towns, cities, nations. Each nation has an archangel, or each special tribe or whatever. And then the principalities, they work on the big history movements in the world. So even bigger than just nations, like the whole history movements. And then above those, there is 3 more layers: powers, virtues, and dominions. Powers, virtues, and dominions are responsible. They again even higher than principalities or archangels, one step above each other. They're responsible for the rotation of the planets. Each planet has a spirit in it. Each, like planet Earth, has a spirit. Some of the lower ones have the spirits of planets. The higher ones are the spirits of whole suns and solar systems and galaxies. The higher you go, and then there is a third one that is even higher than the previous one. They're called thrones, cherubims, and seraphims. They are principles of love, wisdom, and truth. And the cherubims, are actually the 12 signs. They create the 12 astrological signs, the 12 constellations. They're not actual constellations. Imagine like 12 huge entities without physical body that surround our solar system, corresponding to the constellations, and on a smaller level to the signs. And those cherubims, they basically have each one. So there's cherubim of Scorpio, cherubim of Sagittarius, that those principles, Scorpio is survival and, depth, but they give off this energy of the principle that creates everything. So it's not the constellations themselves that are the actual, signs, the energies, those entities that represent. So the high going entities, and one day, hopefully, will also be cherubim, seraphims after billions of years. And they also started their developments from the level of minerals, plants, humans, angels, archangels, but it took billions of years, And even our solar system, it started, 4 billion years ago. As it's known, the whole universe, they say 14 billion years, might be more, we're just guessing. But there was a first incarnation of our solar system, which we call A. It was called the ancient Saturn, but it has nothing to do with Saturn, but it's just a name. And on the A here, the whole solar system was on the level of the higher mental. Because first there was nothing. There was just God, and there was no mental, astral, physical world. But first God creates, the highest after God or Christ is the higher Devachan. It's known in some places, so higher mental world. So for billions of years, that's where we were. Then on the second incarnation of a solar system, it was at B level, which was called the ancient sun, but it's called B. That when it went to the lower Devachan, the lower mental world was created, synthesized from the much finer substances. Then there was the C, the ancient moon section, incarnation of the Earth or the whole solar system, let's say. And this is when the astral substances were secreted from the bodies of things like seraphims, cherubims, these huge entities of incredible power. They kind of divide from their substance of love, of wisdom, start condensing it, and around it, like warmth first comes, then light, and then it condenses more. And in the last 4 billion years, we're here now, the D section, the physical. For the first time, we have thousands, billions of years without physical, just astral. The D one is where finally our solar system becomes what it is. And it's taken 4 billion years, the D part, where we currently are. And we're going to talk about that one. And then we'll go again, the whole solar system on the Earth will reincarnate in a few, I don't know how many millions years into E. So it will go into astral form again. Then, and the humans by then should turn into angelic consciousness. When we come out of D into E, but when the planet, the whole solar system becomes only on an astral level, not physical, our consciousness will be that of angels. After that, when we come out of it, on the 6th level, F, we'll be at the lower mental plane, the whole solar system, and we'll be at the consciousness of archangels. And then when we go to G, we'll be at the consciousness of archive or principles that rule whole nations. Each one of you will have their own nation to rule, to go, your own planet to lead the historical events of. But we're talking billions of years, We all started from the consciousness of plants, minerals, but we're going to speak about this D in particular, the incarnate that we are, which has 7 periods as well. Of course. And the first one was called the Polarian, billions of years ago. The whole solar system was just warm gas during Polarian time. There are legends about Polarian stuff, but it was not physical. It's billions of years. And it started, interesting enough, esoteric knowledge tells us, with alignment with Scorpio constellation, and it carried on to Taurus constellation, but it took 2 billion years, this period. Polarian, and by the way, interestingly enough, this is how evolution goes. So it starts in spirals. So you see, each circle is going through the zodiac cycle, the 12 signs, but look how much bigger the lower circles are. Yeah. So each next rotation, it's shorter and shorter and shorter. For example, when we talk that the Polarian age was from Scorpio to Taurus, which is 7 signs moving backwards, that took millions of rotations of the Platonic year of 26,000 years. The next one was a bit shorter, the next Hyperborean period. The next one a bit shorter, the Lemurian. The next one a bit shorter, the Atlantean. And ours, basically now the Post Atlantean, corresponds to 2,000 years per sign. But before it was much longer. So don't think these things I'm talking about happen much shorter. At the beginning, the Polarian was huge period, but it had 7 sub-periods in it, which are the 7 signs from Scorpio, Sagittarius, it's moved backwards, or Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, it passed through, because you remember the precession is backwards, right. But there was no sun then, there was no planets yet. Then it went through Leo, Cancer, and Gemini. Reached Gemini, and it finished in Taurus. Why am I mentioning this? Because our humanity, basically the way it is in this section right now, the manifested world, started with Scorpio. And Scorpio is known as the sign of conception, but it's also where our solar system crosses the galactic center. So the galactic center is the impulse for life. So it always our solar system has to be aligned with the galactic system. The star Alpheola in the middle of our galaxy, the Milky Way, it is like that, and we're somewhere here, our solar system, and there is a giant sun somewhere here in the middle. Right. So when, let's say, the proto-star, the proto-solar system, the ancient solar system aligned to the galactic center, which corresponds to the constellation of Scorpio as well, conception started for this new phase of the Earth incarnation. And I'm not going to say what happened in the Polarian age, except that it was very long, and during the Polarian age, the first proto-planet separated from the sun, which was Saturn and Jupiter. So basically, the solar system was as big as Saturn back then. And it was like, it was not exactly a sun, but it was hot gases. And, you know, it was as big as Saturn, not as big as Saturn, but as the ecliptic of Saturn around the sun. So you fill up all the space that Saturn makes a circle around the sun.
Right.
And then during that Polarian time, Saturn separates the first, that's why it's the border of our solar system. It's, you know, actually Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, according to esoteric, Western esoteric knowledge, they're not from earthly origin. They were attracted to the solar system from outside. That's why it has such weird influences. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, you know, it's much harder to, they're out of the ordinary. They're not so much of the material. But Saturn was the limit. And Jupiter separated then. And then we come into the second period, which is called Hyperborean. Maybe you've heard there is legends about the Hyperborean race. Hitler, I think, even talked about them, but he talked about them as people that lived, and it's not. The Earth was still not. There's no Earth. And during that age, which started from Aries to Libra, but I'm telling you again, these are much longer periods. You know, not just 2,000 years. So it went in an opposite order. What happened in the Hyperborean region is that during the Aries period, Mars separates. So that's why Mars rules Aries. Because during that time, during when the first age of the Hyperborean was Aries age, Mars separates. So now the Earth, Sun, Venus, Mercury are one big sun. We have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars as planets outside. Mars separates during Aries time. So it starts ruling. And then we have, after Aries comes, you know, Pisces age, we go backwards. It comes also Aquarius and Capricorn age. And because they're Saturn ages, something really interesting happens in the Aquarius age in the Hyperborean time, which is very relevant to now. It's kind of cycles repeat and they have similar stories. In the Hyperborean, when there's no physical human beings, they're just, the consciousness here is I forgot to say, in the Polarian age, the consciousness of humans is trance-like. They have no physical body, plant-like, like deep sleep, deep unconscious. But it's not physical plants. It's kind of fine matter. In the Hyperborean period, which is a few billion years again, the consciousness of humans becomes plant-like. The first place was mineral-like, Polarian. Minerals like a rock, you know? So in the Hyperborean time, they're a little bit more aware. They have some sense. I don't know, whatever the plants feel, but there is no physical reality still. It's still like gaseous, whatever. You see, the Earth hasn't separated from the sun yet. Hasn't from the protostar. But this is what happens, that the sun finally separates in the Hyperborean time from the Earth. So now we have, from the age of Aquarius, the separation of the sun and the Earth. And actually that's felt very painful for the souls of the human beings, whatever consciousness they were in. And also there were angels, archangels, you know, whatever. It felt very painful because this is the life-giving source. That's why the sun is in fall in Aquarius and Capricorn, because that's when it separates the life force. But this is great that it happens because this is the beginning of where the ego starts coming into the human, but it's still not there. And this is another interesting thing because at this time, during the Aquarius age in the Hyperborean culture, epoch, is when souls start splitting into three. The most evolved souls are the so-called solar teachers. They complete their human evolution at that period. Even though they never had, let's say, the same physical bodies as us, they've already, and they're only 12 or something like that. Wow. And some of them are the 12 bodhisattvas. If you've heard the 12 bodhisattvas, Buddha is from them, Zarathustra, Hermes, Vinstaduno, such huge teachers that come on earth. They complete their evolution before we even had physical bodies here, when the sun and earth separate. On an astro level, it's on a different level, you know. And they become the great teachers of the future for humanity, the solar teachers, we call them. Then another part splits of humanity, the normal human beings who will continue to become us. And then there is a third part of souls during that period that splits, the stragglers. And now you might think it's very contradictory, but they're always stragglers, but their souls would become the animals of the future. So it's the other way around. Animals are human souls are stragglers, rather than humans coming from animals. But this is still not on a physical level. This is still like there's no physical. It's more gaseous and soul flying around and whatever. I can't even imagine it. I'm not trying to be wise ass because it's quite hard even to explain. And then we go through the Capricorn down to Saturn, Sagittarius ages, Capricorn, Sagittarius age, and Scorpio and Libra are the last ages of the Hyperborean time. I can talk to you about those ages a lot, but we don't have time. So I'm just going to go to the last age of the Hyperborean root race, which ends in Libra. And this is when Venus separates, because Venus is more internal planet, closer to Earth. And Venus rules Libra. So that's the reason, the very deep esoteric reason, at least this is what this tradition of Rudolf Steiner and Christian Rosenkreuz tells us. And Libra separates, and this is the beginning when the seraphims, they're angels of love, the really high levels, they're on the top, they start exuding from their body substance of love. So they start the first seeds of love to be put into to solidifying the human form. And that's why we know Venus and Libra and the Venus root signs rule love. But they start exuding that. It's like their body starts condensing because they are not physical. And then we go in the third age, which probably a lot of you know, Lemurian. Now, Lemurian. The Earth is separated from the Sun, but it's still a hot mess of ball of fire.
It still is.
Yes, and
We're
it starts
still a
in
hot
Lemuria with the age of Virgo. Guess what happens? Then Mercury separates from the Sun. So of course Mercury rules Virgo.
So
And-
similar, but not the same.
Yeah, so this is Mercury. But you see, it's still not the same solar system. It's very different solar system than what we know.
Right.
Then comes the age of Leo in the Lemurian time. Still no physical human beings as we know them. Maybe some kind of a plasma in the oceans or something like that. But then comes the Leo age. And this is when the ancients describe it that this is when finally we have the solar system as it is. The sun is alone. The sun it becomes the modern sun that we know. It's not mixed with other planets. They've all separated. So Leo rules, sun rules Leo. And we have, thank you. Perfect. But then the higher beings that we talked about, they start separating from themselves and his sense. And I forgot which one they were, the Elohim, I think. They call them the Elohim. They start from their being exuding something that will become the I, the self-consciousness of the human. So till now, they were working on the astral body of humans, which is the feelings, but there was no ego, no ability to say, I'm separate than you, I know who I am. Self-awareness, self-consciousness. So the exuding of that starts, and it starts pouring on the original human beings around Lemurian time. They were animal-like. Right. This is the phase where they were animal-like, but they were not the same as animals. It's a different path of development. And they start the spirit of God. When they say God breathed the air into the human and they become living beings, this is when it's happening. During the Leo and Cancer period of where they're both ruled by the sun and the moon, they rule the individual soul, the individual ego and consciousness. So this is when it starts getting seeded on humans. It takes millions of years. It's not like suddenly I'm a monkey and I'm like, hello,
Where's my lipstick?
Right. Slowly they start becoming aware. I'm separate than you. I'm like, but still there is no speech. The earth is hardest, lots of volcano and stuff. Maybe around the time of dinosaurs as well. That's the only thing. It's very hard to give times. Like they say we can't give times. when we bring that knowledge from the Akashic records, you just see the processes and not the timing. Something interesting starts happening in Cancer. It's called the Great Lunar Catastrophe.
Whoa.
This is when the moon separates from the earth, because the earth starts becoming too hard, and the sky being safe, it will stagnate the development of humans. It will calcify their soul. So we need to remove the more dead part of the earth. And it kind of excretes it again over a few million years, I don't know how long, a few 100,000, and becomes the dead body of the moon, but it's part of the earth. And it leaves, and this is when the separation of the sexes begins. Till then, humans were Adam or Eve, it was just Adam or Eve, you know. They would propagate almost like separating like amoebas, and then through eggs, and they pass through this kind of animal-like stages that are repeated in the embryo. But again, it was very different than all the other animals. And then in the age of Cancer, what comes, you know, and you see the sign of Cancer is like two souls separating, twin flames splitting into one, yin and yang, male and female appear for the first time in the middle of the Lemurian age. Till then we were one sex, like that can self-reproduce itself. And the separation starts, and the true propagation, or what is that called? The true, propagation by man, woman, male, female starts appearing. That's why Cancer rules. This Cancer rules getting pregnant. And Cancer is the sign that longs the most for its other half.
There you go, you can have it all.
That if you know, they say, oh, Scorpio is the most sexual, but Cancer or Venus or Libra is about love. Cancer is the sign that longs like no one else for this twin flame, like longs like no one else to have their other half. And because that's when the separation happens, and they yearn for this other half like no one else, like no other sign. So if you have a bit of Cancer, you know why they're so like you complete me, you know. So that's during the Cancer period. The Elohim infused the self-consciousness. The Elohim, you've heard from the Bible, they're one of the higher angel or archangel levels into the human being. And then we come the Virgo period, the Gemini period of the Lemurian time. Then Gemini's original symbol is a man and a woman. Now we have a man and a woman. The sexes are separated. It took the whole Cancer period for the, change of the reproduction to change. Now we have man and a woman. And then we go into Taurus, age of the Lemurian time. And the vocal cords of humans start forming. Because humans could not talk before the sexes separated. Actually, the separation of the sexes and the reproduction gave the, Scorpio is sexual organs, Taurus is the opposite. They had to separate so humans can develop talking, and that happens during Taurus, which was talking and the voice. And this is when affection starts to appear between humans, the first attraction. And it continues into the Aries age of the Lemurian times, which creates passion, sexual desire. It's not only attraction anymore, and the Luciferian beings of that. They are angelic beings, but stragglers from the angelic evolution, stragglers. They on purpose sacrifice themselves so they can, after that, through opposition and by doing damage to humans, move their evolution. So the Luciferian beings introduce passion and strong desires for the opposite sex or for other physical things during the age of Aries in the Lemurian time. Speech starts here in the Lemurian time. And then the last age is Pisces of the Lemurian time. This is when first kind of religions start coming. They start singing then. That's how they describe it in the Akashic records. The woman, and by the way, in the Lemurian times, women were leading. The women principle was strong. It was from two female signs, from Virgo to, it ends in Pisces. So the dominant element is women. And the women, because in Lemurian times, when humanity started forming around the middle of Lemurian times, they say it's about 18 million years ago. So when they start forming as humans, the sexes separate around 18 million years ago. The women become the dominant ones because they first start to develop memory. There was no memory. And Lemurians were the ones who first started developing it, but the women. While men were trained into very extreme conditions, they were sent to experience the thunder, the storm. They had to develop the willpower. And the beings of Lemuria, the human beings, had supernatural powers, incredible willpower. They could, for example, with thought, but they didn't even have thought, with concentration. They had power over plants to make them grow and such kind of stuff, over natural phenomena like thunderstorms. And I know it sounds like a story, but this is what ancient, it's very different than what we have on the earth now.
Right.
Well, women developed that kind of a religious feeling or this awe towards nature, and they developed and because they first had memories, they were the leaders, because men couldn't remember to tie up their shoes back then.
They still can. It's not all.
And you know, till now, women have more memory.
Yeah.
You know, women
Oh, we men know, you don't forget. We know. We know, you don't forget.
We don't
They
forget
remember
anything.
like elephants.
Yes.
And they looked very different than us. They had no big forehead or anything. They were much taller. They were like, oh, I know, 20 feet or something like that. But their body was not as thick as ours. But still, they had no forehead. You know, their main place of residence was somewhere in the Indian Ocean, going into the Pacific Ocean. But it all sank eventually. And then we come to the Atlantean age, which lasted a few million years as well. That's the fourth age. Atlantean, and we all heard of the Atlantean age. Guess what sign it started with? Aquarius, and it finished with Leo. When the and by the way, Lemuria ended with a big catastrophe. You know, very few of the Lemurians survived, and they were the seed of the Atlantean race. The ones that survived, they were prepared by Manu, the leader of humanity, would go and choose the ones that have the best memory, that have developed the most qualities that are needed, and he would separate them in an area where they wouldn't be cataclysm, because Manu, the leader of humanity, is way more evolved. They were like little kids. They were sending way more evolved beings to lead them, and they knew that, and they would listen to them. And Manu would separate a small part of the Lemurians that were formed during the Gemini period of the Lemurian time, and put them there. And when the big catastrophe, I think that's when the dinosaurs were killed as well, when they died out. And just that small part, maybe it's not the dinosaurs, I can't tell you timing again, this small part was seeded onto big land where Atlantida is. Of course, they spread everywhere. And in the Atlantis period, which started with Aquarius, they even have names there, because Atlantean period is much closer. The first period, the Aquarius one, was called Rmoali, and then it came the Capricorn period. It was called Tlavatli. They had names, but I can't tell you about all of them because we don't have time. But there was a serious attack from entities on humanity around the Aquarius and Capricorn times. And there was a huge separation again around the Aquarius time between more evolved and less evolved humans. You see always around Aquarius, Capricorn time, big splitting starts happening. Like the teachers, the more evolved, the normally evolving. So we had a repetition of that in the Atlantean time, but the light forces interfered, the light beings, angels, archangels, and kind of created a balance. It's kind of described in the Bible as well, or other religions as well, with different stories. But we're going to go quickly to Scorpio, after Scorpio Sagittarius time. Priests and temples started appearing in Atlantis. Where disciples were being taught for the first time in the Sagittarius time. There are a lot of other stuff that happened, but I just tell you the fast, quick. Then comes the Scorpio period of Atlantis. It was called the Proto-Turanians. Proto-Turanians, that's the name they give it. That's when black magic appears. Now it gets dark. That's what we call the fall of humanity. And they describe it as kind of quite dark time, and they start using, because Atlanteans also had power over the life force of plants. They could use it to fly, they could use it like we use coals and electricity, but they had access to the etheric life force of a growing plant, so they could look at the plant and make it grow much faster, for example. So it's very different again than what we know as humans. And so they started using that life force for fulfillment of selfish desires, some of them. So black magic appeared just for satisfaction of sexual desires and so on. The so-called fall from gray starts happening. And then comes, from the after Scorpio comes the Libra time of Atlantean times. They're called the Proto-Semites. So from here, Manu takes a small group. Now in Atlantean times, what is developed is incredible memory. In Lemurian times, humans didn't have memory. Only the beginnings of it. Now they have incredible memories, but they can't think logically. If you give them something and ask them put the toy together or something, they can't think of it. Or they have a problem, if they've never seen it before solved, they could never figure out a way how to do it. So no logical reasoning, no calculating mind, but incredible memory. From there come all the traditions where they honor their ancestors a lot in ancient times, because those people, the wisest, the most respected, was the ones that were the oldest, because they have the most memories. And evolution happens super slow, because when you can't create something new, you only repeat the same thing.
Yeah.
Whatever you've seen, you repeat, and millions of years pass, and you still, nothing has changed much. Maybe some aliens come, give you some system of agriculture, and then you repeat. Mm-hmm. But they venerated a lot the ancestors and the elderly people, because they had all the information. It wasn't, suddenly you genius and you're like, only the most advanced had this logical reasoning. They were preparing them in special schools. And from the Libra sub-age, they separate a small group of the ones that have the most, let's say, materialistic, let's say that. And that these were the ones that were going to do the seed of our Post Atlantean age, because they had the most calculating mind. They had the seeds of thinking. So Manu takes away a small group, a few thousand people that are the most developed from around the world, that have this ability to reason more logically. Libra is a little bit reasoning as well. And while the rest of humanity just have memory, takes them from Atlantis, passes through islands, wherever it is, and goes into Asia, Taklakaman Desert. It was not a desert, it was a big lake there back then, in the middle of Asia somewhere, where the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert, it was green and verdant back then. It's quite a few, maybe 50,000 years ago, something like that, and starts preparing them generation after generation to develop them, not spiritual abilities. They were trying to cut out the spiritual abilities so people can be more in their bodies, because Atlanteans, Lemurians, they were in a dream state. They couldn't actually, in Atlantis, you couldn't even see 5 meters high, because the air was, they couldn't see the sun, because it was like a smoggy fog. Imagine there was like volcanoes, it was the water of the oceans was all the time, it was steamy, so it's like steam. So they never had clearly, they could not see clearly far. They never developed the senses so much, those previous, they had powerful intuition, everything they feel, understand who you are, whether you wish them good or bad. But this had to go away from human evolution, so we can develop reason, so we can live in the material and start to get to know the material world. Because if you have those connection with the higher worlds that Atlanteans, Lemurians has, you don't want to live in the real world. Right. It's like, if I can be high on, those entities there and in paradise, for them they didn't even recognize when they were dying there was no pain, because they knew every night when they fall asleep they were very conscious in the higher worlds. Now we're not. Nowadays you're not conscious. You have your own dreams, but that's not the higher worlds. The memory, you visit it, but the memory is deleted when you wake up. Mm-hmm. But back then they had, and for them, dying, living, and they even described they were coming so fast. They'll come and live 20 years, 30 years, drop the body, come again. But that's why what paradise was. Well, we were animal-like a bit. We weren't very conscious of what's happening around us, but we didn't care.
Yeah,
we were living in heaven, basically, in the astral. We could access it. But then those ones from the Atlanteans during the Libra Age, which were called the Proto-Semites, they were the most material, the most focused on, the most awake in the material reality, the most they have developed to a little bit their logic. So from them, would start the first race of the Post Atlantean time, and those, the first not race but culture, let's say. But anyway, after Libra came the Akkadians during Virgo time in Atlantean times. The Akkadians, you probably heard of them, they developed laws, and this is very Virgo. They ordered things. It was not ordered before that. Everyone was doing whatever they wanted.
And this is after the destruction of Atlantis.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, not yet.
Atlantis still, but they've taken out the group that they start to train already, the
Okay.
Mam. But the other groups continue developing, other root races, they call them. So they live corresponding, they never one stops, another starts. They kind of intermesh, like we have in different races now, whatever, but it's not exactly races, it's like cultural epochs or whatever, stages of development. So during the Virgo one, or the first laws and rule, Virgo laws. So you need to have order here, they become traders and so on. Then after Virgo comes Leo. That's where the Sphinx was created. Actually, originally the Sphinx was not a human head, it was a lion's head, much bigger. And it was looking exactly on the eastern horizon on springtime when the constellation of Leo was rising. So that's why the age of Leo was then, the last age of Atlantis. And they knew, the high priest knew, it's going to be destroyed after that. It's the seventh age. A new age will come after that. Everything goes in sense. We have to keep that knowledge we have. So they create the Sphinx and other places around the world that are sacred, then they put the knowledge there. And even Rosen has told you sometimes some could do it by sealing themselves on the ground, and in a meditative state they keep the knowledge. So they're kind of like mummies, but they keep the knowledge and they exude it. But they have some huge libraries under the Sphinx. People say there's chambers and things like that. They've measured them. And that was the times of the priest kings. If they were a king and a priest, they were noble kings. They were not like nowadays, So they'll do the best for their people. They're the mighty kings, whatever. But destruction comes after that. Noah's flood, as we know it in the Bible, or Post Atlantean, everything, And a small part, maybe a bigger part, survives, and it starts spreading from. It's called now. I don't want to use such terms, but they call it the our age now, after the Atlantean. It's called the Aryan age. It doesn't mean white people. It means because it formed in that area the first proto-cell, where the culture started in that area that is called Aryan area somewhere in Asia, whatever. So they start, those humans that we start now post-Atlantean period, our period since 10,000 years ago. The first age is called the ancient Vedic age. It's the age of Cancer. And the most wisdom is given in the area of India, the Vedas, around there. They have their saints. Every age has their own high masters and teacher. They have the 7 rishis.
Yes.
And in the age of Cancer, because humanity has decreased so much, in this Vedic age, big copulations, reproduction, because they have to repopulate the earth. So Noah's Ark. And by the way, this is when the skies have cleared. There are no longer such fogs in the air. That's why the rainbow appears after the deluge. And God says, I'm not going to destroy the earth again, but it's basically the climate changes so much in the post-Atlantean time. The Atlantean was foggy, watery, Now in the post-Atlantean, it becomes clear air, like you can see. You can see clearly the sun. But and they have to repopulate the earth. Cancer age, bam, 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 babies. But in Cancer age, in the ancient Vedics, they were so detached from reality still. That's where it comes the knowledge that reality is illusion. They were like, their belief was reality is illusion, the real, and it's true, real reality is not here. We don't know aware of that, but that's why they had those practices with yoga to slow down, because they knew they're going to become more and more material. They had to get extremely material, lose consciousness. And they were trying to preserve this consciousness of connection with higher worlds. They developed the yogic practices, the breathing, to keep up the connection. And the 7 rishis were living then. And then comes the second age. So the Cancer age is from 10,400 years ago to 8,400 years ago. So from 8,400 BC to 6,200 BC. The second age is Gemini, and that's called the ancient Persian. Ancient Persian, it's happening Persia, parts of India, kind of, that's where the hub is, but it spreads always around the world. And this is when consciousness changes, and always at the beginning of a new age comes a new teacher. Now comes the so-called Zoroaster, Zarathustra, the teacher 6,000 years ago, and he teaches, and he gives the knowledge of light and darkness, Gemini, black and white. He gives the teaching that the solar being, the god of the sun, Ahura Mazda, the great aura, will one day come on earth in physical shape for a little bit and will merge with the aura of the earth, because earth is going more and more dense in the material. Earth is becoming calcifying, let's say,
Right.
from a very rarefied astral to more and more dense. And he said the process will be reversed in the future. The spirit of the sun will come and merge with the aura of the earth. And the evolution starts again from physical to astral over millions of years.
Oh, wow.
But so he starts saying that the spirit of the sun, Ahura Mazda, is coming close to teachers. And there are forces that are trying to stop that. Ahura Mazda, the Vedic rishis called the spirit of the sun Vishwakarman. The Persians called it Ahura Mazda. The ancient Egyptian Babylonians called it Osiris. And the Greeks called it Dionysius. We call it Christ, the Christ consciousness. It's the same thing. The highest spirit of our solar system, the most evolved being, that is So this is what comes in the second age, Gemini, is the Persian, the ancient Persian time. But then they stopped looking at the earth as just something that is Maya and illusion. They become more incarnated into the body, and they say, we're going to ennoble the earth. We're going to make it, we're going to take the spirit, divine spirit, and we're going to ennoble, create something out of the earth. And they start developing with the both hands, Gemini. Tools. Well, they have tools before that, but they start developing a lot more. The hands, writing appears then, Gemini. This is around 5,000 years, the ancient Persian times, when the writings appeared. And then we come to the third time, which is Taurus, which is the Egyptian Babylonian time. And it's from the time of from 4,000 years ago till 2,000 approximately. And that's where the senses develop very much, the senso.
Oh, yeah. That's what I
This is when astrology appears, interestingly enough, in the shape and form that we know it, because they start losing touch with directly to have inspirations. Now they have to read the signs. So now they have to find the signs of God, because before they could hear directly. The hierarchies were telling them, do this, do that. Now they can't anymore. They don't know. So they have to find, the stars. So we're going to develop astrology. These omens, they start to develop such things through nature to understand what's happening. And then Hermes appears as a teacher here in the Egyptian. You've heard of Hermes. Always a teacher appears at the beginning of an age. Hermes appears at this age and gives astrology. It's known in other cultures with other names, Hermes as well, and gives the ancient knowledge of the Babylonians, of the ancient Egyptians. They revered around that time, even in India, in Egypt, the cow, Taurus, the holy cow. Then comes the fourth Post Atlantean age, which is called the Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman, from 2,000 years ago, 4,000, to around 200-300 years after Christ. The Greco-Roman is Aries, the great heroes, the great wars. Alexander the Great, Persia, for 2,000 years, lots of wars, but there are basically a lot of willpower and strength, a lot of cruelty, Right. Let's go have fun. Shall we go watch people being eaten by lions? Yay! That was kind of cruel, But it was the teacher then, of course, sorry, the solar spirit. Okay, this is the time in the age of Aries before it ends, and the beginning of Pisces when the Christ, Jesus Christ, this is the teacher of the age of Pisces comes. But there is something interesting that happens, and I'll finish with this so we can go after that. This is the end of the involution of humanity, because every 33 million years, that's a huge period, our solar system, if that's the sun, and if that is our, let's say, galaxy, and we're somewhere here, every 33 million years, our solar system goes below, for 32 million years, below the level of, because it's kind of flat like a plate, our galaxy. For 33 years, it moves a little bit below the plane of the Milky Way.
Right.
And then for 33 million years, it moves above.
Okay.
Exactly 2,000 years ago, our solar system starts crossing above. So we come from 33 million involution. When it's below, always it's much harder. There is involution of spirit into matter. So the spirit has to forget its connection to God, to consciousness, and dive deeper and deeper and deeper to experience everything, to disconnect from God, from higher consciousness. 2,000 years ago, it starts climbing. We have 30 million years, guys. We're just at the beginning, but it's looking good. We're on the rise. Evolution, not involution, evolution. And that happens. So I know a lot of people say Jesus is just like a teacher. Jesus was a human being. But Jesus was the incarnated Zarathustra, the teacher of Zoroaster at the Persian times. But at the 30th year of Jesus' birth, he goes to the river Jordan and the spirit of the sun descends on him. It's called initiation.
Oh.
So the Zoroaster, whoever is the actual, the body, the soul of Jesus, leaves then, and just the Christ consciousness stays, but only for 3 years in the body of Jesus, the human being who was prepared for a very long time for that, of purification, whatever, because it was the spirit of the sun, the being that rules our solar system. It's known, as I told you, in ancient India as Vishvakarma, as the Hurumas. In the modern Christian world, we know it like the Christ spirit. But every religion has a name for the spirit of our solar system, and that's the most evolved being, because of course the most evolved being will control everything, decides to enter into a physical body, and it has to decrease itself 170 million times in power, and it takes thousands of years of this approaching, of this condensing, until at this point everything is arranged that it can come into the body of a physical human being. And for 3 years, that's why he says the word speaks through me. He's like in a trance, and some higher being talks to him, just like we have channelers now.
Yeah.
But some of them might channel, not many evolved entities.
Right.
So for 3 years this happens, and then the moment the human being, Jesus, is killed, the solar spirit merges with the aura of the earth and becomes the soul of the earth. So for 2,000 years, the sun spirit, it doesn't mean the sun doesn't have any soul, it just kind of is like an embrace. This is the sun, this is the earth. A part of the aura of the sun comes and embraces the earth. You know that like a few billion years ago, the earth separated from the sun. Now starts a few billion years process where the earth will again join with the sun. And that will be the process of, when humans reach higher consciousness. Doesn't mean we'll live on the sun, but we're not going to have physical bodies by then, Right. But this is the beginning, 33 million years of climbing up of evolution. So we have a lot of time, guys.
Right.
We're incarnating over and over, and with every next life that you come, a little bit more of that spirit of the sun comes into you a bit deeper. And that's the feeling of love, of compassion to others. You don't have to call it Jesus. You don't have to call it Christ. You call it love. You call it kindness. You call it higher abilities. But some people will consciously reject that. They'll say, no, I don't want that. Some people don't want those abilities, don't want to connect to higher power. They'll consciously. So those will be the stragglers, and we'll talk about the future from next time.
Okay.
So there you go. I'm
Thank
not
you.
going to keep you
Thank
too
you.
hungry. Do you want to go to... You want to go to